You know, I really think your pecs look good in that shirt.
Thank you. I mean, this is Banana Republic.
Can I touch it? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
We got it at Costco. No big deal. Spent $25. Most money I ever spent in my life on a sweater.
You call that a sweater?
I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Long sleeve?
That's a long sleeve shirt.
It's a long sleeve shirt? Okay. Oh, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm Nick Beveridge, your host, here with the man of the hour, Jeremy Kitchen. Good morning.
Hey, top of the morning, everybody, or top of the afternoon, or top of the midnight if you listen to your shows then.
Why would anybody do that?
I don't know. Some people are night owls, man. Some people do their work at night.
Yeah. Well, night should be saved for porn and sleeping.
You heard it here first. Don't do any work at night. Look at your porn and go to bed at night.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. We are so thankful you decided to spend this next hour to an hour and a half with us. We've got a really cool episode today, don't we, Nick?
It's great. Yes. Real estate due diligence.
Oh, yeah, due diligence.
We haven't talked about this in a while.
We haven't. I don't know if we've ever actually talked about this, but I think this is a very important topic for people to know exactly what to do when they go under contract on a house.
Yeah. So for real estate investors, it is so easy when you're new to get lost and just not know what the hell you're doing constantly. And it seems like the majority of people they're teaching, like when they go to real estate investing classes, they're teaching you how to get a deal.
Right.
How to go under contract. But like once you're under contract, then it's like another moment where they're just lost. And they're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So we're not just going to talk about like just get a home inspection.
Right.
It's going to be what to do when you're under contract and to take it to the finish line.
Right.
Plenty of due diligence we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But yeah, big thing. People just like, they don't know what to do sometimes. And which is so okay.
It is very okay. I mean, honestly, I've only done a few deals. If you've listened to this show, most of my deals have been partnerships. So, like, the due diligence process is still something I'm kind of learning, and I don't think you ever stop learning how to correctly analyze this property and if it's going to be a good fit for you.
Yep. So, quick overview before we dive into the huge thing. The whole process of when you're under contract, it's just the time period from when you've created this deal, this handshake, this agreement. The agreement's already been made.
Okay. Yep.
And it is just a time frame to give them the money for the property, and maybe not necessarily to renegotiate, but just to make sure it is what you think it is.
Right.
And that's a big thing. And also maybe to put in place partners or funding or that kind of stuff, or insurance, all those kinds of things.
It's made to basically make the house is as advertised to you, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it as advertised?
You're buying the thing that you think you're buying.
Do I need to back out or renegotiate? If you're a real estate investor, most of the time, if you've gotten a great deal under contract, most of the time, this is just your time to get your loan in place, get a quick inspection, and then just figure out your plan to fix it up and flip it or to rent it out. But for a lot of novice people that aren't used to doing this, it's a time to figure out what the hell they're doing.
Right, exactly. It's a time to get maybe a second opinion too.
and it may be overwhelming because all of a sudden there's so many more people that are going to be involved. There's going to be inspectors, contractors, insurance people, title people, escrow people, your brokers if needed. Yeah. And the list goes on. Yeah. So you need to do this well-coordinated dance to hit your timeline of when you said that you're going to close. Yeah. And it does really, even if it's a cash deal, it can still take a few weeks to close. Yeah. So don't be unrealistic when you write up a deal with somebody and you think you're just going to get a hard money loan and you just need a week to close. Right. A week is not enough time in most cases for a title company to even just do their research. Right. And be able to have you come sign and close and get all the funds ready. Right. And I'm going to say that again. If you're brand new and you got this great deal and you think you're just going to get a hard money loan, or maybe you have the cash in the bank and you tell somebody you will close in 5 days, you might be ready to close in 5 days, but not the third parties. Right. So at least give 2 weeks. Yeah. In most cases, a week sounds great for like a deal. Sure. But to be realistic, you need on average 14 days to 45 days to close a transaction. Right. Even with hard money, like we can do a deal in as little as like 9 days. It's tight. By the way, it's very tight. So, we try to say like, hey, if you can get 2 weeks to close, that's going to give us enough time to do our due diligence on our back end, make sure you can get us our funding, make sure we can get the house paid for you. Like the whole thing, there's a huge process, and just kind of talking about the process itself. So
on market deals, if you have a real estate agent, is a real estate agent going to be taking care of most of your due diligence for you, or should a real estate agent be taking care of this? At least scheduling things and kind of getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, your real estate agent is going to play a humongous part in this. And that's you may be wondering yourself in general, what's the point of a real estate agent if I can go put a deal together with a for sale by owner or whatever it is, or the house is online, agents that get paid too much. What agents actually get paid, 80% of their work is during due diligence with you. They are taking you through that process. They know the right companies to work with to get you clear title. If there's issues, they know solutions to figure out. They can refer you the right inspectors. There's different types of inspections you may want to get, not just a regular home inspection. You might want to get a roof inspection, a sewer scope, radon. Check to make sure it's not in the flood zone. If it is, can you maybe get a flood elevation certificate to maybe not have if your structure's not in it, can you bypass that? So there's so many things to consider as you go along with it, in this transaction.
Zoning laws. There's so many things you can do.
That's why it's helpful if you're working by yourself directly with the seller. It's helpful to hire an agent to help you through the process if it's your first time.
Sure.
If you've done it a few times, you may not need an agent.
Sure.
But if you're new at this, it certainly is worth the money, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
And usually a seller pays for it.
Right, exactly. So it's not like it has to come all out of your pocket. Some of it may even, you may bring it to closing, but a lot of times, a lot of these numbers are, you can negotiate on that stuff too.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, sellers need help with this stuff too.
Yes. So it's just kind of a nice intermediary to kind of smooth the transaction along.
But your real estate agent can, if you come up with a verbal agreement with a seller, an agent can come into play and actually write up your contract for you too and stuff, and bring both parties together that way.
Yep.
But first thing, let's say you got a deal. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You have a contract, I hope.
Purchase and sale agreement, at least something.
What do you do with that? Well, you've got to start executing the terms of the contract. If a real estate agent wrote up the contract, they have these templates that are written by attorneys that basically take you through that whole 30-day period.
Gotcha.
On the contract that you can just kind of follow one page at a time. It's not that easy to read though, and if you haven't done it before, you might be confused. So
verbiage is kind of crazy on that stuff. I mean, I've seen the real estate contracts plenty of times, but still, I'm like, okay, this is written in a way that almost makes it hard for the average person to understand what is actually happening here.
And it's not intentionally done that way.
No, it's just professional language.
It's just they have to use professional language, and they have to list out everything. Everything's important in that contract, and that's why. It's funny. There's a stat out there, and I might be getting it wrong, but I think it's 6 times more. If you are doing private transactions in real estate without a real estate brokerage involved, it's 6 times more likely to go to litigation.
I believe it. I would believe that.
6 times more likely for people to sue each other over things. And it's all about, in the business world, it's all about clear communication.
Yep.
And that's the one great thing about these contracts. Yeah. In Idaho, at least, I've worked in Florida too. They're all relatively the same.
Sure.
But that's the great thing about using templated contracts and people that can interpret everything for you.
Yeah.
That have been through this step. It's very hard to be confused.
Yes.
At least because, if a title company gets this document, the contract that an Idaho agent writes up. Between 2 parties. They don't need to ask any questions about what to do when.
They've done this a million times.
Well, no. They just follow the instructions in this contract. Yeah. If you have a napkin that you write the price and what date you like to close, maybe even you don't even have that sometimes.
Right,
You just say, this is the price for this address, and you say, hey, title company, can you help us out here?
Yeah.
They might have a lot more questions for you, and they might be confused, and balls might be dropped.
Yeah.
But if they're looking at the proper contract, 8 pages that goes over every single step, who's in charge of what, who's paying for what.
Right.
And there's all kinds of little things that, there's 18 different things other than just the price.
Yeah.
Of other terms that you may be a little vague of who's paying what. Like if it's in an HOA, who's paying the HOA transfer fees, who's paying the HOA setup fees.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, for sure. What's crazy is so my wife and I we're watching Yellowstone. I think I said this before, but we just watched an episode where Beth Dutton tries to buy 111 acres of this guy's crazy ranch in Montana, and she just asks him, she's like, "What price would you sell it for?" And he's like, "I don't want to sell. Name your price." And he's trying to think of a number that's asinine. He's like, $3 million. So Beth has her assistant just write him a check right there, and she's like, "Get out of my house." But I was watching it with my wife, and she's a transaction manager. I'm like, there's no way in hell this is how a real estate transaction works.
Yeah,
but I was like, obviously,
but it's
like,
a show.
But it's a show, and it was funny. But us being in the world, I'm like, there's so much more paperwork involved in just buying 111 acres than a check.
Yeah, you need it needs to record with the county.
Yep.
A deed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was just a funny thing to watch. So
yeah, that would be silly. Get out of my house.
Get out of my house. Here's your check.
What if the check bounces?
It's John and Beth Dutton. I don't think it'll bounce. They've got the monies, man.
Does Beth still show her tits in future seasons?
I'm on season 2. I haven't seen any boobs. In season 1 there was.
That's a real common with these TV shows.
Yeah.
Like a real common problem. They'll
problem?
give you all the nudity in the first season.
Oh, that's how they get you in. They hook, line, and sinker.
Less and less nudity as these seasons go on, which is kind of like the real estate world.
Yeah, sure. I remember watching there was a pie chart. It was how many deaths and how many naked bodies per episode of Game of Thrones. Yeah. And it's like, here you go. Here's your 7 seasons. Here's where you're going to find the most literal bang for your buck.
Where are you looking for charts like this?
It popped up on social media for me, but I was like, somebody actually took time to make this. They're doing the Lord's work.
Right. It was AI.
It was AI, probably. Anyway, back to due diligence. I just wanted to share.
Yeah, sorry for this. I'm going to sound like a total pervert by the time this episode's done. I'm
More
sure.
than likely.
Yeah. Which is the goal. The goal is to get less and less viewers as we do this.
You and I have different goals on this. I want to provide maximum value and entertainment. But if you want to catch this thing on fire, man, let's do it.
I'm trying.
Okay.
I'm trying the best I can.
All right. We got one person starting a fire, one person putting it out. But so due diligence, like walk us through the whole thing. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing you want to do when you have an agreement with a seller is go bring that contract to the title company that you guys agreed which title company you're using. If it's not in the contract, already you got a problem.
Yep.
But you can still probably bring it to a title company, but you'll want to list on that contract who's the title company.
Isn't that crazy? Like
And
step
also-
1, if you don't even have a title company listed on your contract, you can already be in trouble.
Yeah. So you have to identify what title company you're using. If you're using a title company, you should.
Yes.
You should get a warranty deed. And that's the difference, the warranty deed versus a quitclaim deed.
Yep.
And then there is a difference between a title company and an escrow company. Who's going to be doing they could be 2 different companies.
Yep.
But of course, you can almost always, like a lot of title companies are also escrow companies.
Yeah, they've
and
got
they
escrow
do
built
both
in.
at the same time. But there's a difference. Like one is doing research and providing insurance of title.
That's your
on
title
property.
company.
Yeah, they're warranting the deed, and then the other company, which is usually housed in the same, is escrow, and they're just doing all the final billing.
Yep. They handle the money basically.
Yeah, handle all the money and the signatures and make sure all parties are, in line with the contract.
Yeah.
Again, so typically it's the same one. So title company we're using this, escrow company we're using this,
Right.
X whatever.
Sure.
And then ideally you have a certain amount of due diligence time. In the state of Idaho, when we put in your due diligence time or your inspection period, the contract's defaulted if you don't fill out anything in there to 5 business days.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common.
Yeah.
So that's 1 week. You need to know the difference too between business days and calendar days. There's a difference in the contract. Business days also don't have holidays. Like holidays are skipped.
Okay.
But calendar days, holidays are in existence and they count as calendar days.
Right. It's on the day of the calendar, right? So like if it's a 5 calendar day and you get it on the 20th,
5 calendar
it'll
days
be on the 25th.
Yep.
Versus business days, it could be, you have to look at your weekends and holidays and everything like that. Before we get too far, I want to talk about warranty deeds. Like, what is a warranty deed, and why is that an important piece?
Good point. Okay, so anytime you're selling real estate or transferring ownership, it can be as simple as just going to you print off a quick claim deed, which you can print online.
Okay.
Like they're all over. There's templates everywhere online,
Sure.
and you basically just have this little paragraph in there transferring, like, this person is forever quit claiming the property to this entity, and then it's notarized.
Yep.
And you bring that to the title company, and it doesn't even have to be signed by the buyer.
Okay.
It can just be the seller that is giving the property to a certain person or entity or transferring title or whatever.
Gotcha.
And then you bring that to the recorder's office at your local county, and they'll make sure that it's notarized.
Yep.
And they won't do. They don't care if there's other liens on the property,
Right. That's not
or
their
anything
job.
like that. They just record it, and boom, there's a new owner. And that's it.
Okay.
But that new owner also inherits any potential liens that might be on that property.
Yeah.
Any potential problems, liens, easements, all those things that, like, all the baggage comes with the house in just a quit claim deed.
Yeah.
It's a quit claim,
Quit. Not quick.
not quick, but it is quick.
It is quick, but it's quick.
It's quit claim deed. So this is common in like people that switch from an LLC to another LLC, or from their personal name to an LLC, or property that there's no liens against. And if you just want to sell it to your buddy, and you can just not use a title company and just go spend the $10 at the recorder's office to transfer it. However, yeah, if there are liens on the property and you want to get a warranty or give a warranty to a buyer, you deal with the title company,
Right.
And typically the seller pays the premium.
How much is that? Just out of curiosity. I know every state's probably going to be different.
Yeah, I want to say it's around 0.25%
Okay.
of the value of the property, or the purchase price,
Okay. Cool.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So if you have a $300,000 house, it's around $1,000, $1,500, somewhere in there.
Sure. So warranty deed is specifically going to, protect you or your seller in the event of if there's any liens or any defaults kind of on the property, right?
That's what they say.
Okay.
There's insurance. They're warranting that this is the way the title is.
Gotcha.
And that's the thing. They're not really. they're warranting that this is the way the title is currently as of the date of the sale.
Right.
So there could be a bunch of liens, problems on it, and they will still, as long as all parties agree,
Right.
to close with, like, this is how they get subject to done. Subject to this lien that's in place.
Gotcha.
That's the strategy subject to. It's a title term that, okay, you're taking the property, you're still getting warranty deed subject to this, but just be aware of all these other things that we found on title.
Right.
These other easements and exceptions that we're leaving.
Gotcha.
So the title company just makes it very aware of everything that's going on with the title.
Gotcha.
I don't think I've ever heard of them really paying out problems.
No, yeah, I don't think they pay out on problems. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what exactly is a warranty deed, and and the benefits of it. So
Yeah, the benefits is peace of mind.
Yeah.
Peace of mind that, like, because you can easily get duped by somebody online going to sell you a property. You buy that property, you do a quick claim deed.
Yeah.
And then that property has a bunch of baggage or liens or.
Have you ever bought a
got a
property without a warranty deed?
I have sold properties without a warranty deed.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember once I purchased a property in Cataldo from a bank, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. It was Freddie Mac.
Freddie Mac. Okay.
And I was going to fix and flip this house. Purchased it for like $30,000. And then this guy that used to live in the house approached me. He was like trying to get a hold of the listing agent forever. The listing agent eventually just gave him my contact info. He took me to Sherry's and bought me pie.
Nice.
And told me his whole life story.
Yeah.
And said he's got enough cash to buy it for $35,000 from me. And I'm just like, ugh. I'm like, all right.
Well, you bought it for 30, right?
Well, we were going to buy it for 30.
Yeah,
We were under contract. So our agreement was, okay, how about we use your money to close on this, and then the difference we'll just take.
Okay.
I think, and it was around 5,000.
Cool. So you almost wholesaled it at that point.
So we closed with a warranty deed
Okay.
for me. And then 30 minutes later, I gave him a quick claim deed, quick claim the property to him.
Gotcha.
Now, I couldn't just wholesale it because Freddie Mac, buying an REO, they want to make sure they need to vet the buyer.
Right. So you were the buyer.
And I was the buyer.
Yep, okay.
And they approved that transaction. I closed on it. I couldn't assign it. They wouldn't allow that.
Yeah. So it's almost like a
But
double
way to get
close what
around-
you're doing then, right? Yeah.
I closed with his money. And then we just instructed the title company to just pay me the difference.
Cool.
And I had them draw up a quick claim deed. So I got the warranty deed. All of a sudden, it was null and void because they're not transferable.
Sure.
As far as I know, but at least he got to see that it was warranted.
Right. Yeah.
And then a half hour later, gave him a quick claim, and I was done with it.
Cool.
And then he went and took it to record
Awesome.
at the title, at the county.
Yeah.
But we just that was an easy way to get that done.
Sure.
Can't remember if I've done it before that or after that. Maybe. I don't know. But that's just one example that comes to mind.
Did you get I know we're talking about due diligence on this episode, but did you get emotional during that time when he was telling you his life story? And because clearly, obviously, you bought this house to make more profit than that.
Yeah, we were probably easily going to make more than that. Hey, quick commercial break here. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you want to give back, let me help you buy a house, or I can help you sell a house. It's the only way I make money when I'm not investing in real estate. I don't make money on this podcast or the events I do, but I do make money only when I help people buy and sell houses. So if you're looking for your next investment and you're here in North Idaho, I want to help you personally. If you are not in North Idaho, I can still help you out. I have a vast network of referral partners all across the country, and I can find the right real estate investor savvy agent for you so you don't have to. It doesn't cost you a thing. Thank you for your support. Back to the show. I get emotional? Not really. I don't really. I mean, I felt like this was his opportunity to buy back his family home that he grew up in.
Yeah.
And he had 35 grand.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm like, I really don't want to go out to Cataldo to fix up a house anyway.
Right.
Go ahead. So
Yeah.
we didn't need to make, the most amount of money
Right.
every time.
And that's true in a lot of real estate. It's not always about the dollar. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
about like, okay, like it's honestly going to be a headache I don't have to deal with.
You want to hear the funny thing about that?
Yeah.
I found out like the next day from the list agent. He's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, the Panhandle Health granted that property $20,000 in soil work or whatever.
Oh.
For a Superfund site. Yeah. So he got a $20,000 budget.
Okay.
To be able to go ahead and clean up the yard.
Wow.
So
you
the
live
guy
and
did
learn.
well.
Yeah, you live
the
and
guy
learn.
did well.
Yeah.
He bought a property for $35,000, and then got a $20,000 budget to clean up the yard from the government.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he did fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, all I did though, he earned that $35,000.
Sure.
He worked a lot harder to get that money than I did just to get that $30,000 property under contract.
Right.
I mean, I just made an offer on the MLS.
Right.
And then eventually we were able to get it. I think we got it for $38,000 initially, and then we were able to get the bank down to $30,000 during due diligence because there were a few things wrong with the property.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So due diligence, we're talking about it. I mean, that's the first thing we talked about is just getting the title company involved.
Yep.
And what they're going to do is they're going to research. They don't take any money up front. They do charge at the end. That's a great thing about a title company.
Yep.
Is that they're one of the few people, like brokers, that you don't have to pay for as an operating expense.
Yep.
It's a cost of sale. So they'll take the money out at the end, whether it's your money or not. And just like a real estate broker, they'll take the money at the end, whether you put the money in or not.
Sure.
You don't have to pay for them up front like an attorney.
And does the buyer or seller normally pay for a title? I forgot.
Usually the seller does.
Usually the seller, right?
But a buyer could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to
just
sweeten
have
the deal, you just got to...
You just got to check the right box in the contract. Yeah. So typically the seller does, and typically the escrow fee, the money to do all the paperwork that the escrow company does, that is usually split between both parties.
Yep.
Usually the buyer and the seller, they'll split it 50-50.
Gotcha.
So if it's $1,000, 500 each.
Cool.
Ish, which is really common in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. And then immediately, when you're first under contract, your due diligence time frame is typically ticking. Mm-hmm. So if you gave yourself 5 business days, from the moment both parties sign that contract, that's when the time starts ticking. Mm-hmm. So if you have 1 week, 5 business days, you have a week from that day by 5 p.m. or so.
Sure.
To get all your inspections done and make sure that you're still going to go through with the house.
Is that enough time?
Yeah, typically, as long as you're on it.
Yeah.
As long as you're not just letting days go by.
Sure.
It could not be enough time sometimes if you're buying a house that's tenant occupied.
Sure.
And you can't even get in the house for a week.
Yeah.
That could be an issue. So it's something to be aware of, something that you might have to talk to your seller about. If there's tenants there, just get a little more time. In the defaulted templated contract, there's lots of language there explaining that the seller needs to have the home available for inspections with all the utilities on.
Yep.
That's important.
Yeah. You need to know that the water works and the lights work.
You need to be able to test for leaks and stuff with the water on.
Yep.
You need to be able to test for electrical issues with the electric on. These are things not everybody thinks about, though. Sometimes when you're buying a distressed property, utilities are off. You give yourself 5 days and you can't even get them on for 10 days, and then your inspection period's done.
Yep.
You know, so you got to be aware of the current status of the property and how much time you might need to get things inspected.
Even if you're listing a property and it's vacant, right, you should really have your utilities on. That way they can do their own due diligence and you don't have to mess around with this stuff, right?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Just make it easier
You
on
never want,
everybody.
like, if you're selling a property, you always want the power on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You don't want frozen pipes and that kind of stuff, especially if you're up in the Northwest.
Yeah.
But properties are always going to sell for more with the power on, with the heat on. And if you walk into a frozen house, you're walking, it's great because you're going to probably get a discount. You're going to probably get it below market value, below what it would cost somebody to just have the power on.
Right.
So don't be a dummy seller out there.
Yeah.
Keep your power on.
Keep your power on. Keep it warm and inviting.
Keep it warm.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we talked about title, we talked about escrow, and we talked about, kind of setting up this warranty deed and all your escrow in place and who's paying for that. What's the next step after that?
Okay, so inspections. Let's talk about what type of inspections you should be doing. Now, in tandem with the title company doing their research right off the bat, you should also, all at the same time, be working on getting your loan in place if you need a loan.
Yes.
And hire a home inspector.
This is very important, by the way. This is
an inspector can take 3 days or so to get to the house if you only have 5 business days.
Right.
That's why you need to jump on it. Like day 1, you need to call and schedule an inspection.
Yeah.
If you wait till day 5, you're probably not going to get a home inspector there that quick, or have the time, because they typically need a day or two just to put the report together after they've been to the house to send it to you.
Yeah.
So that's why 5 business days. Only give yourself that little bit of time if you've done this a lot before.
Right.
And if you have home inspectors and stuff that you trust that can jump on things, because you can't let a day go by without doing anything.
Right.
You're going to screw yourself up.
I was going to say, like, what you said was very important there because, it's not just like, okay, I'm going to take this to title and I'm going to wait for title to do this and I'm going to, set up escrow and then I'll wait till they're done and they're going to tell me the next step. Like, no, when this happens, as soon as you leave the escrow and title office, you need to be on the phone with contractors. You need to be on the phone with inspectors. You need to be like getting these pieces in place because what happens is a lot of people get busy. This is their job. They do this all the time. Everyone's
always
busy.
Interrupting everybody all the time.
Yep.
So you need to be a squeaky wheel always.
Yep. You need to kind of help push the process along for sure.
Yeah. Another thing you need to be doing right away is shopping insurance.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't wait till a few days before, like I always do. I need to do a better job of this personally.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always screw up the insurance. I have a checklist.
You have a checklist? Why don't you move the insurance up on your chest? Yeah.
I probably should as soon as I buy a property. Actually, the last time we got a property, I think I did pretty good on that.
You should put it in every step. So like every 3 or 4 steps, like follow up on insurance. Make sure insurance is still happening.
Yep. And you know what? I think what happened actually the last time, I think right away I sent the address to my insurance guy and he missed it or something like that. And then I forgot about it.
Yeah.
So then you're a few days away.
Job's
from
not
closing.
done if you just send the thing out.
And the lender's like, so do you have a binder yet for the insurance? You're like, oh yeah, what happened with that?
Yeah. I was
Never
on
back.
it, but I wasn't.
Never
So,
heard back.
but earnest money is an important part of the piece of this as well, right? Is that coming up?
So earnest money, you drop that off with the title company or the escrow company when you drop off the contract would be a good idea, or within the time allowed by your contract.
Sure.
The earnest money, if you've given yourself a few days to get it, you don't have to drop it off right away with the title company. But once you get a contract, like same day, you need to bring it to the title company so that they can get working, because it could take them 10 days.
And your due diligence starts when you sign the contract, not when you drop off the earnest money, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, exactly.
Your due diligence time starts once all parties have signed and executed a contract. That's what they call it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people know what earnest money is, but just give us a 30-second rundown of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the earnest money is what binds the contract. And it's your down payment or deposit, if you will.
It's your promise to continue with the loan.
Yeah, it's your potential consequence of you defaulting on the contract, of money that you are putting up that you could potentially lose if you're in default. Now you could lose more than that.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's just the money that you and the seller agreed on, which is acceptable.
Yep.
Most of the contracts I do on my investments, I'll offer $500.
Sure.
Because I am never really going to care if I lose $500.
Right. But there's a sweet spot there, right?
But also it's not zero. It's not $10. This is just my own belief, my own theory. If you tell a seller that you're going to put $1 down, or $10 down, or $100 down,
you just don't sound very serious.
Yeah, I think it just puts like they're like, okay, they'll go along with it, but I think it's just in the back of their mind. And this is just my own conspiracy.
Yeah,
that they're not really that they're thinking this guy may not be serious.
Sure.
I hope this works out because he has such little to lose.
Right.
You put a few $100 down. I think the majority of the sellers I work with anyway that are in distress, selling a distressed property, $500 is a lot to them.
Sure.
And it's very little to me. I think it's a sweet spot.
Sure, and that's what I was going to say. It kind of is a sweet spot. Like, obviously, the seller wants you to be serious about buying the property, so they want a more maximum number of earnest money. And you, as the buyer, you want to put as little down as possible because you don't want to accidentally. I will say, anytime you go under contract, you should have intent to buy or intent to move forward with the contract if everything goes through. Don't just be writing contracts and putting out earnest money willy-nilly.
Yeah, but $500, I mean, that will buy somebody a PlayStation 5. I think.
Yeah, maybe not with like the games or the updated edition, but
right. But I think that's the way people think about it.
Yeah. I could get a PS5 with this.
You get a PS5 or an Xbox with several games.
Yeah, and Xboxes are way cheaper.
You can get a Sega Dreamcast.
Ooh, maybe. Oh, those are vintage nowadays.
Are they?
Yeah. But no, that makes sense. So obviously, $500 seems like a good number. it just depends on the state you're in as well. Like, there are different. Now, earnest money guidelines.
Yeah, if you're buying $1 million development deal, $500 maybe isn't going to come off that serious.
No,
maybe you need to be more appropriately at $10,000 or something like that.
Maybe you need to be at $550. Yeah.
Rule of thumb: 1%.
1% of the purchase price.
Of the purchase price. Okay. Is kind of if you just have no clue.
Sure.
That's usually a good amount.
Yeah, and that goes towards your contract, right? So like that's money that goes towards your down payment, right?
Yeah. It'll get credited back to you, assuming that you purchase the property or that you back out during your due diligence time.
Okay.
So that's the thing. If you, in Idaho, when you're going through due diligence, you can back out for whatever reason you want.
Yep.
You don't even have to give a reason.
Yep.
Necessarily. You just have to send the proper documents within the time frame to cancel the contract.
Yep.
Now, in Idaho, you can back out because you don't like the zoning or the schools that you're researching, or like the tree in the yard.
Okay, yeah.
The color, the shade of grass. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to give them a real good reason. It doesn't have to be a great reason. It could just be any reason. Any reason you want. It's your time to back out with no penalties.
Yep.
Now, there's other contingencies in your contract. Once you're past the due diligence time frame, if you're getting a loan and you made it contingent upon the loan, it's also contingent upon you getting that loan.
Correct. Yep.
And if you can't get that loan that you want, you can potentially back out with zero consequences again and get your earnest money back.
Gotcha.
Now, the times in which you may lose your earnest money is when you're done with inspection periods, you've moved forward, and your loan is approved.
Okay.
You have a full loan commitment, and you still back out at the end. There's a good chance you're going to lose that earnest money,
Right.
and potentially more sometimes.
Yeah.
If a seller's already packed out, moved out of their house, and they're out a few $1,000s, and they're renting something else,
Right.
they moved out of their house, they're renting something, and then you don't show up to closing. I've had that happen before.
Okay.
With a buyer.
Uh-huh. Not with you personally?
No.
Okay.
I was representing a buyer, and they just decided last minute. They're like, you know what? We don't want to buy.
Okay.
We decided we're just going to go rent something. The seller had already moved out of their house, and they were renting something else.
So
Yeah.
you have to pay for them to break their lease. You have to pay for them to move. Like, I'm assuming that's what happens, right?
So they put a $2,000 earnest money up, lost it. It was all good.
Okay.
Like the seller just took that, no complaints. I think they were able to sell their house. It was during I don't know, it was probably 2018 or so. So it was like a good market where
Sure.
they were able to sell it again.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it could have been bad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I remember my ex uncle-in-law
Okay.
moved out of state. He had a buyer for his house in Virginia, and he packed up his whole family. He had a nice big house in Virginia. Packed up the whole family, packed up everything. The family, they were finishing out school, so they went to like a hotel or something like that for
Sure.
a couple of weeks while he started driving this U-Haul across the country. He got to Idaho, and then he got this call that the buyers didn't show up to closing.
Nice.
And so he had to turn around. Once he got into Idaho, he turned around. He was going to move to Osborne.
Okay.
And drove all the way back.
Wow.
And decided never to sell again. Moved back into his house.
Yeah.
But that's expensive.
That is expensive.
I think he had a nice job too.
Sure.
I think he had to quit his job.
Wow.
He had a job as like an executive at a hospital, like doing something. So you can really fuck up someone's life when you don't show up to closing.
Yeah.
As a buyer, so you got to take this shit seriously.
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know the rest of the story, but it could have been bad for that buyer.
Yeah.
That just didn't show up to closing. Because they could have potentially, if they wanted to, sue them and win a much larger amount in court.
Right.
Based off the damages that the seller incurred, based off the buyer breaching their contract.
Wild.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. So just make sure if you're going through this process, make sure you A, take it serious, and B, like, fall in your time frames.
Yep. So during your inspection, here's some good tips. Get a basic home inspection, but just know what the basic home inspection is. This is a guy who's just going around the property, spending about 3 hours there, who's not necessarily an expert in roofing or not an expert in mold, not an expert in framing, not an expert in foundations. This is just somebody who's probably pretty handy and has a good sense of how a property should work, maybe took a few courses, but like in Idaho, you don't have to be licensed to be a home inspector.
It's true.
But they're just going to go around and look for things that could be wrong with the property and recommend you should probably get it checked out by a professional. Like if the roof, they're not sure, looks to be aged 20 years,
Right.
maybe have a roof inspector or, they'll recommend you having other inspections upon that. But most of the time, they're definitely still worth the money.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
It's great to have all these photos and issues where they check every square foot of the house, including in the crawl space. They'll crawl around in the crawl space.
Yeah.
They'll walk around on top of the house. They'll get inside the attic.
Yeah.
A lot of things most people just aren't willing to really want to do.
Sure.
But they're equipped to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And to point out flaws with the home that you should be aware of.
Right. And a buyer usually pays for these, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
The seller's not going to pay you or
Yeah.
pay for you to get your house looked at.
Yep. Nobody's going to pay for it except for the buyer. And that's why sometimes buyers skip these steps because they want to be cheap.
Yep.
And they might buy problem homes.
Don't recommend it.
Which, hey, I've been there.
We've done it. I don't recommend it.
Yep. So it's a good idea to get a basic home inspection. Beyond that, you may want to check, like in Kootenai County, for radon. It's a potential health hazard.
Yep.
And there's a lot of random properties in this. Excuse me, I'm hiccuping. There's a lot of random properties in Kootenai County that have high levels of radon.
Yeah.
Could cause cancer. I don't know if there's like solid proof of that, but
Sure.
It's something to be concerned with. I know a lot of newer homes, like built by Greenstone and stuff, they're made with radon mitigation systems.
Yeah.
But you can get a radon test, and usually a lot of home inspectors can like add that as an option, and they may have the ability to do radon tests.
Sure.
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of them can do sewer scopes for an additional cost.
Yeah.
Extra $100 or so.
Very important.
So worth it.
Yeah.
Get your sewer scoped, everybody. Because that's a great way. If there's something wrong with the sewer line, it is an incredible way to get discounts on the property or potential remediation work done. So that's where they jam, either in the clean out or in a toilet in the basement. They're going to put a camera down and go all the way out to the street.
Okay.
And check to make sure that sewer line is in good shape.
That your line all the way to the street is good.
Yep.
Cool.
I'm going to check the type of piping that it is. Make sure it's not an old Orangeburg, cardboard thing that's coming apart.
Yeah.
Make sure it's an ABS line, especially if it's an older house. Please get this stuff done.
Yeah. 100%.
Newer homes, we just had one done on a house that's only 20 years old, built with ABS, but the whoever built the home back 20 years ago, this is not long ago. We're talking 20 years ago,
2004.
4, yeah. They didn't compact the area well where they put in the sewer line. So, the compaction, that machine that and the gravel. So the line had dipped and was having backups.
Okay.
But not to the house, but it was backing up, and there was water line in the water line in the yard all the time.
Gotcha.
This was a $10,000 fix.
Yeah.
And I think they paid an extra $100 to have this looked at. And my seller, I was working with the seller. They did get it fixed, and it was an issue. But it was the first time I ever experienced having an issue, because most people don't get newer home sewers scoped.
Right. It's important to get it, though.
It could be an issue, too. Now I'm like, geez, just have them looked at on almost every property.
Right.
Because it could save you a huge expense down the road.
Now, is that something as a real estate agent you suggest to your person buying the house?
No, I let them typically talk with the, unless it's apparent, usually they're talking to the inspector about these options. So as an agent, I don't need to always go through this with them.
Right.
Usually I'll recommend them to a professional that will talk to them about all these options.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get a mold inspection done, but me personally, I wouldn't recommend this, because a home inspector, if they see mold, they're just going to point it out and take photos of it and say there's mold. You don't need to spend the extra money, in my opinion.
Sure.
You don't need to spend the extra money to test the mold to make sure it's mold. Just spend the extra money to get it fixed.
Right.
Or have, this mold in an attic or in a crawl space is absolutely something you should ask the seller to take care of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they will almost always take care of it. And it's so common in North Idaho for mold to be in a home that's, not because a lot of homes just weren't built with enough ventilation.
Yeah.
But these days they are. So get tested for, you don't have to test the mold, but just be aware that it's something that's likely in an older home.
Now, let's say real quick, I'm sorry, I know you're kind of going through the list, and it's really great to know all this stuff. Let's say a house has mold, and you ask for remediation on the mold, and you're still in your due diligence period, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
What if the buyer says they'll fix it outside of or what if the seller says they'll fix it outside of your inspection period?
Yeah, so this comes later.
Okay.
So right now you're just building a list, and you're not asking the seller to do anything yet.
Gotcha.
Until you're getting close to being done with your due diligence.
Gotcha.
And then we'll get to that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're not asking the seller for anything just yet. You're just building a list of concerns
Got it.
that you may or may not ask for.
Sure.
Depending on your situation. So some other inspections that you can get the roof inspected by a roofer. Because, a home inspector is not necessarily going to always give you the best advice on older roofs.
Yeah.
If it's like a rubber roof or something like that, you may want to get an actual roofer who's got experience with that stuff instead of a home inspector who has no idea.
Right.
Foundation, if you're buying something with a basement and you see these cracks. Hairline cracks, in my experience, aren't a big deal. If you can stick a quarter in one, it could be an issue.
Sure.
You may want to check with a basement foundation specialist, and they're going to be an engineer typically.
Yeah.
And see if things can be, what the proper fix is, if a fix is needed.
Right.
Yeah. And then some things that you'll also want to potentially inspect on your own. Make sure like the property's not in a flood zone.
Yeah, that's very important, actually.
And you can, and I'm going to share on my screen here, if you're in Kootenai County, how you can do this. 1 sec here. Share entire screen. So there's this great website in Kootenai County that the whole public has access to. A lot of people don't know about it. It's called kcearth.gov, and it's a GIS mapping tool. And you can go to a particular property. Let's say you're buying a property in Rathdrum, over here near the hill. So you can search by the address, or you can just kind of zoom in on it. Wow.
We're on a Apple Mouse right here, so it goes. It likes to zoom fast.
Yeah, and then there's this options over here for layers, and you can click on this boundary display, and there's a little drop down. Easy to miss.
Yeah.
And you can see, is it in the city limits or not? You can click on that. Looks like these aren't, but their city limits are over here.
Yep. Okay, so the big blue is the city limits.
Yep.
Okay.
So city limits is right here. Maybe, I want to develop this area and it's adjacent. You know, you could be like, maybe this might be a good property to market to because I want to develop this, and it's right next to the city.
And they can always annex it into the city, right?
Yeah, something like that. But we're talking about flood zones.
Right.
So let's click off of that and click on flood zone. And then, you can see, look at this flood zone. It's just traveling right through this area that you would never expect.
Right next to the highway.
It's funny. The very first house I ever flipped was on Bingham right here. 7850. Look at that. Right in the middle of this flood zone.
Wow.
And
it's not something you'd ever think about.
Like a year for insurance on that thing. I bought the property for $44,000 back 10 years ago. But the insurance alone was $2,400 a year.
Wow.
Now, eventually we shopped that. We got it much less.
Right.
But the initial provider was charging a lot. So it's important to check because look at,
and your insurance was more expensive
look at how much flood
because
zone.
You were in a flood zone then, correct? Is that the main reason?
Yeah, because we were in a flood zone. Stop sharing.
Cool.
Okay. So anyway, you've got tools out there available for you.
Yeah.
Always check. Just make sure that the zoning is what you think it is. Is it in the city limits or not? Is it in the flood zone? Kind of check those things to give yourself some peace of mind.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you won't buy a property in the flood zone.
Right.
But there are some things to be aware of. If it is in the flood zone, you might want to check to see, is there any flood certificates out there that I can research and see if the structure itself is in the flood zone or not. Because if the structure itself is not in the flood zone, but somebody the property is, you could be exempt from needing flood insurance on that property.
Okay.
So there's start doing your research there too if you think you're in a flood zone.
Now, when houses in a flood zone like that, is that a typical, is that a stop process? Like, nope, don't want to buy this. This is in a flood zone, or is it just something you just do more due diligence on?
It depends. Like we were buying that property for so cheap that we were going to buy it no matter what.
Right.
But we could have maybe asked for maybe a discount. Or we could have asked for more time to research. Just say, hey, can we get another 2 weeks for inspection here?
Right.
Because we need to try to figure out if the structure itself is in the flood zone or not.
Yeah.
And hire an engineer to do a survey.
Right.
So there's everything can still be negotiable at that point if you find new things during your due diligence period.
Okay.
And you can ask for more time.
Sure.
If that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good to know stuff for sure. So.
Yeah. Let's say you're done with your inspection period. If you're working with an agent, you're going to send what's called an RE10. It's an addendum to the contract that basically states that, hey, we're done with our due diligence period, and we're going to either A, move forward, or B, we are backing out. Thanks, sorry, we're canceling.
Yep.
Or C, we will move forward, with the exception that you handle these items.
If these things are taken care of.
If you handle these items, or we will move forward with a $5,000 credit.
Right. Okay.
Or discount or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's like three options that you have. Either you're moving forward, thanks, we're good, or we're backing out, sorry.
Yep.
Or we'll stay in if
as
you,
long
if
as
you can handle these things.
Okay.
And then the seller is either going to take that contract that you send them and they're going to sign it and agree to it, or they might send you a counter like, hey, we'll take care of these items instead.
That's
Cool
pretty
with that?
typical. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. We'll do that.
I know.
Or we'll agree to this concession, not that much.
Yeah.
So you're back in negotiation, and in the contract, there's timelines involved with these that are already predetermined.
Yep.
Like they have 3 days to respond,
Gotcha.
3 business days to respond, and then you have 3 days to respond to that.
Can you keep countering? It doesn't have to be more than one?
No.
You only get one counter?
Yeah. Once the you only get one chance. You send an agreement, and then they will either agree to that or counter, and then you, at that point, can take it or leave it,
Gotcha.
and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Or you can always amend the contract, but that's the way the contract's laid out initially, so it doesn't go on forever.
Right. So you're not in this perpetual...
It's designed, it's designed to not... The contract is designed to stay on time.
Sure. Which is great.
But you can always amend your contract if you need to keep going.
Right.
But it does stop at the third point.
And I know we've done this on the deals that specifically we've sold together. Like you'll contact me and say like, hey, new buyer's asking for this, and this. I think we should only fix this and this.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that because it's like, okay, like they're still interested. Clearly they're still interested. If they weren't, they just would have said no.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be a stickler and, ask for every single thing.
No.
Because then the seller's just going to be like, why would I fix all this stuff?
It gets overwhelming. If you send 2 pages
Yeah.
of like repairs, and you're just like, dude,
why would I do this?
You walk through the house, half these items you were aware of.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to be, think with common sense here. When you're negotiating with these RE10 items, try to only ask the seller for things that you were not aware of,
right?
That you found out about, things that weren't obvious. If you made your offer based off, what you thought was obvious, like the deck's falling apart and that kind of stuff, and then you go ask later for them to fix the deck,
right?
When you've already made a low ball offer that they accept, like you got to be reasonable out there. That's how you take deals to the finish line. Is that everybody's trying to be as reasonable as they can.
Right.
It's when people get unreasonable is where you just get stuck and the deal falls apart.
Yep. And that happens all the time too.
Yeah. So the next step is your loan. Let's say you're good with that. And the next step is to make sure that the loan is in place. There's appraisals if there's an appraisal that has to be done.
Yeah.
That will typically come after the inspection to try to save you a little bit of money so it's not being done at the same time. Because if you end up backing out, it sucks to have to pay for that home inspection and then also have to pay for that appraisal that you're not even going to use.
So buyer pays for appraisal too.
The buyer pays for the appraisal too, and they are expensive these days. You're going to spend like $700 on the low end to $1,000 for an appraisal. When I started in real estate, appraisals were like $300.
Yeah,
which I thought was a lot back then. And it seems like everything's doubled in price.
Sure.
Home inspections really aren't that bad. They're $400 or $500.
Yeah.
And they're worth it. I feel like home inspectors do a lot for what they put together.
Yeah. So obviously buying a house costs money. Obviously, like if you're going to buy something, you got to get an inspection, you got to get an appraisal, you got to split the escrow fees.
Buying a house costs money even if you don't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So be prepared for that.
And that's why it's important to kind of be serious about the things you're buying as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why you need to move past this inspection time frame quickly so you can get to the next step, which is the loan appraisal process.
Okay.
And that's where your lender is going to be make sure that you've given them everything they've asked for, because they're going to ask for more stuff,
right? And
do it in a timely manner. Because what you're trying to get is the lender to give you a full loan commitment, which can usually take another couple of weeks.
Yep.
For them to research, they have to get you on the phone with a creditor and like confirm all these accounts. It's an annoying process that they just have to go through.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it either, but they have to. They have to get in touch with your employer and verify that you're actually employed there and have some sort of letter in some cases.
What if you're self-employed?
That's a whole different process, a whole different animal. I'm just talking about if you're employed.
Normal person with a normal job. Got it.
If you're self-employed, it's even more relentless. But we won't get into that right now since we're already almost done with our time frame here.
Yeah.
So yeah, the appraisal is done next. And if the appraisal comes in at value, you're typically good. Sometimes the appraiser may ask for certain things to get done, which is uncommon, but it happens. So those are items that typically you've hopefully already negotiated at the start, that if the lender requires certain inspections, maybe you sneak in $500 in a certain paragraph in there, that like if the lender requires inspections, you're getting the seller to already agree to spend up to $1,000 or $500 if needed. If the property seems like maybe, you know, it's going to need some little things like a handrail going down the stairs.
And that's all stuff that an appraiser needs in order to appraise it properly.
Depending on the type of loan.
Depending on the loan, right. FHA would freak out if you didn't have a handrail.
Yeah. I mean, they want the safety stuff, which isn't hard to do. This is really simple stuff, guys. So don't overthink it too much, but just anticipate it. In order for an old house to qualify for an FHA loan, as long as it's not like destroyed, there's not broken windows and you know, leaky faucets and all kinds of stuff. It's just got to. It doesn't have to be up to today's code or anything, but just the general safety items kind of have to be there in place. Handrails, GFCI outlets in the wet areas. And those kind of simple things. The shed's not falling apart in the backyard.
No holes in the vinyl or anything on the outside.
The siding's in good shape and the paint is in good shape. And not peeling them. There's not exposed rot.
And you can find all these FHA guidelines, or most of them, I'm assuming, online. Like, hey, what would an FHA loan look for in order to comply, right? It's going to tell you, like, all the things. But just be aware these things do happen, and it's pretty common that there are going to be little fixes on a lot of properties. And typically, if it's a listing that you're buying, you're not dealing with a for sale by owner. An agent's probably already going to know to check a box if it qualifies for FHA or not, because they'll probably, based off their experience, know, this house shouldn't have an issue with FHA, VA, USDA, those other types of loans that are. But conventional loans too kind of have almost similar guidelines that people just don't talk about. So that's it. If you get a full loan commitment, if the appraisal's all good and you're on to the next step, make sure you get that insurance in place for the date of closing. Your insurance guy is going to send the title company a binder and make sure that they're listing whoever lenders are on there. So they got to be in cahoots with just make sure that your insurance guy has your lender's contact info and the title company's contact info, maybe even your agent as well. Yeah, absolutely. Make it easy for the pieces to talk.
At that point, you can probably start packing. If you get a full loan commitment, then you know that your loan, your transaction's probably very well going to go through, and that's typically when a seller can start packing. And they take that last week or so to move out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any questions?
No, I think you kind of laid it out pretty perfectly, Nick. Honestly, it is a little process, but like we kind of said a few times, like make sure you're doing a lot of these pieces at the same time. Don't just wait for one piece. Like, okay, I got the money to title. What do I do next? You need to be doing all this stuff and kind of rounding up all the pigs at once.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing too. If you're going to the title company to sign, make sure whatever amount of money that you have to bring, it's got to be a cashier's check. And you got to bring your driver's license so that they can notarize. So those two things will save you a little trip. Because you don't want to show up and then have to come back later.
A lot of times, I would hope that a title company would tell you, like, hey, make sure this comes in the
they usually do, but not everybody.
But not everybody, right? Exactly.
They don't always see the emails that give them instructions.
That's true.
And it's just people need reminders about these things because they don't do it every day.
We need reminders about a lot of things. Honestly, like if you ask me 2 questions in an email, like. A lot of times what happens is I answer the last question. I answer the last question I see, and I'm like, there you go. Let me know if you need anything else. And they're like,
how about question number 1?
What about the first thing? Got it.
Got it. All right, smartass.
Wow, Mr. Tough Guy. Okay. No, it's, but things just get missed, and that's why it's important to, if you are doing a transaction on market, have a real estate agent kind of walking you through it. I think that's very important. If you're not, make sure you're at least consulting with somebody who's done this before. and can kind of help you, maybe a mentor or something like that, who can kind of help you in the right direction, because it is a lot if you were to be doing this the first time by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just don't want to spend, like, you put a deal together with a seller directly, but you guys feel like you need help, just talk to an agent and just say, hey, if I give you $500, would you help us walk through this? I'm sure 9 out of 10 agents are gonna be like, absolutely.
Yeah.
No big deal. Because they're so used to doing it, even though it is a lot of work for a few $100, they don't mind. It's just another thing in the pipeline. They don't have to go create something. Something's already been created.
Yeah.
And that's usually where agents get paid the big bucks, is because they create deals. They help create and package and put together deals.
They help market.
The rest of the delivery, sometimes they'll have admin that will just like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll do it for $500.
Yeah.
Maybe even less. Yeah. Who knows?
And they just put you in their pipeline anyway.
So you don't have to always pay, $20,000 to an agent to do these kind of things.
Yeah. No, it's good to know that the tools you have available and what you can absolutely utilize. So, thank you, Nick, for walking us through this due diligence process.
You're so welcome.
I feel like I knew a lot of it, but it's nice to have a refresher of like, okay, like what actually happens during a due diligence period.
Yeah, those are the things that normally happen. And we're talking single family homes here.
Right.
There's all kinds of different real estate. There's commercial real estate, multifamily, development deals. And maybe we'll deep dive on one of those another time.
Yeah.
But you gotta keep listening to this podcast.
Yeah. We're not going to give you all the secrets right now.
Yeah, you fucking dummies.
Just kidding. And there goes the other 17% of our viewers.
Yeah, we're happy to announce that last month we lost 81% of our listeners that download our audio.
Yeah. I mean, you're happy. I'm not. I'm a Leo, and I want you to pay attention to me.
Yeah.
But no, like if you enjoy the show, which I'm sure if you're listening to this, you do. So thank you for that. And make sure you leave us a comment. Our comment section's looking kind of a little like a barren dry land lately.
No, and I don't mind that, but it is embarrassing.
I miss my Ryan and I miss my Dave. I can't find them.
I'm doing this show for 4 years and not many comments.
We also don't
Dave,
market
Ryan.
super heavy. We should really put these episodes on our personal Facebook. Oh, Nick.
Should, could, would, whatever.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We love you as always, and we will see you next week on the Investor Shed podcast.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Ooh, exactly an hour.
And 31 seconds, if you do the math. Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.